Joined this morning by Michael Fields, Executive Director, Colorado Rising Action. Where am I wrong on this, Michael?
I think you're right. I have a countdown to make sure it can't come soon enough, and obviously there's still bills going through. Some that just got signed that we've talked about, red flags, oil and gas regulations just got signed. But there's still family leave, there's still Tabor bill, there's still a bunch of stuff, and really when session ends is when we can all kind of breathe a sigh of relief.
So let's talk about, as I refer to it, as that legislatively mandated recession that is Senate Bill 181. Of course, you had Governor Jared Polis sat on his desk from April 3rd until this past Tuesday when he signed it into law. It's nothing more than a slap in the face, particularly to the hard-working residents of Weld County.
Yeah, Weld County takes the biggest hit on this, but also, some other places in the state, the Western Slope. There's numbers that keep coming out about how much, oil and gas contributes to our economy, how much it contributes in terms of local revenue. It was something like 9% of our, GDP out on the Western Slope, which is a big amount. And so it's definitely going to have an impact. He signed it now. And this is when it starts actually becoming real. It's like one side says one thing, the other side says it's going to do nothing at all. In the next few years here, we're going to see what the consequences actually are. And I think for Weld County, it's a process that's still going to go on. I mean, they have these, ballot issues they're trying to get through to reverse this. They also have the recall election up there. That could happen if there's enough signatures. So this is going to be kind of a years-long battle of what happens with oil and gas in our state. Yeah,
it's interesting. I shared an open letter to the community from the Board of Weld County Commissioners that they released right after Governor Polis signed this bill into law, basically saying, if you think you've got us beaten down, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, when you affect people's jobs, their livelihood, their way of life, that's when they fight back. And I think that's what, this recall is about. And it might be, something that doesn't change the makeup, obviously, of the state house because they have so many seats. But it could send a clear message. And Weld County is not going to just take this lying down, and other parts of the state aren't either. And so I think you're going to see a backlash. It's one of those issues. I think that one and probably national popular vote are ones that I think will get, overturned here at some point. Depending on if it's, this year on the ballot or next year. But, this is another thing that's going to affect not only local revenue, but state revenue. They just passed the state budget a couple days ago now. And to think that we're going to, be able to have these tax refunds and everything else, that we're going to be, bringing in this kind of revenue, I just don't see it.
So, there is so much negative coming out of this legislative session. It's tough to know where to begin. I know that Tabor, firmly in your wheelhouse. Let's talk a little bit about the ongoing battle when it comes to Tabor.
Yeah, so there's a bill that went through the state house with no Republican support, which was good. But basically to take away our Tabor refunds permanently, so forever. We would never get Tabor refunds again, so it basically blows through that cap that we have that says, inflation plus population is a big enough growth for the state government each year. Our budget, since Tabor passed, has gone up 306%, so 306% increase since Tabor passed. Our population has gone up 50%. So we're getting enough revenue in. We're getting enough money. But if it goes beyond that inflation plus population, it goes back to the people. And people have gotten refunds. We've gotten over $3 billion of refunds. People like that aspect of it. And this would permanently take it away. And basically, it would go to the ballot this year for us to vote on this. But, we had referendum C, a few years back, and that was just a 5-year timeout. This is a permanent one, and we don't know where that money's definitely going to go. It's a statute, and so they want to split it, a third transportation, a third higher ed, a third K through 12 education, but they can change that at any point. So our Tabor refunds are taken away permanently, and they can take all that money and use it on whatever they want in the future. and I don't trust state government.
Well, no, and I'm sorry. We've learned that through experience, because unfortunately it just goes into the coffers, and heaven knows where it goes from there. So certainly problematic. I wanted to ask you, since you alluded to recall, I actually had the chance to talk with Amy Oliver Cook about the recall Rochelle, of course, talking about House District 50 Representative Rochelle Galindo essentially turning her back on her constituents, voting yay for Senate Bill 181. But asked her the question. I'd like to pose it to you as well. Amy Oliver Cook, of course, a resident of House District 50, and very actively engaged in this one effort to recall Representative Galindo. But is recall the new normal in Colorado politics?
I think we've seen it a few times now. Obviously, in 2013, then again in 2015, the Democrats recalled some legislators in Jeffco, and then you have this right now. I don't think that it's going to be that broad. Like, I don't think you're going to have 5, 6 legislators recalled. It's a tough thing to do, and if you're going to recall somebody, you have to make sure that they lose. I think that this is going to be, in 50, it's going to be a symbolic, and important for that community to have somebody representing them that isn't voting against their interests.
Right.
I think maybe, there's 1 or 2 more that could happen. I mean, I could see, a potential of something like in the Senate side, Leroy Garcia, voted for red flags, or didn't vote for red flags, didn't stop red flags. So, but then voted for the oil and gas, measure, which is very, unpopular position in Pueblo. So maybe, 1 or 2 more. I just think that, this is something that can be dealt with at a normal election. But I think there are certain circumstances where it's warranted, and I think, definitely in HC 50 it is.
Well, and I can't help but think that in voting no on the red flag legislation, that Senator Leroy Garcia was seeing the visions of his political ambitions, as far as his future political ambitions, going up in smoke. Yeah.
But he's the Senate president. He could stop that bill anytime he wants if he really wanted to. So I think that, people knowing that he could have done that and didn't, I think is a big deal. But, voting for this oil and gas measure, Pueblo was against 112 was the third, Wells, you had Mesa, and then you had Pueblo against 112 this last time. So I think there is something there potentially. But beyond that, I think it's very tough to do recalls. It's expensive. And, these elections are up every 2 years for the state house, every 4 years for the state senate. And so I think you're going to see some shift towards ballot issues and actually trying to reverse these bad policies.
Michael, how are you on time this morning?
I'm okay.
Okay, good. Because there's a cornucopia of stuff to get through this morning coming out of the state legislature, to include that whopper of a budget, full-day kindergarten. Yeah. We got the drug crimes reduction bill. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I want to touch on all of those before I let you go this morning. So thanks for staying with us for another segment. More with Michael Fields, Executive Director, Colorado Rising Action, coming your way in just a few. 816 now, 1310 KFKA, 1310 KFKA.com. This time check sponsored by Caring Hearts Home Health Care, serving northern Colorado since 2001, where patient care always comes first. 970-378-1409 or caringheartshh.com.
1310 KFKA Preps Radio is Northern Colorado's home for the best high school coverage.
Hi, this is Dan Patrick, reminding you to catch me and the Danettes next on 1310 KFKA. Now back to mornings with Gail.
Well, I suppose you could call it a party of sorts for the Boulder Gold Dome Mafia as the General Assembly drones on, adjourning May 3rd. And I think Michael Fields, Executive Director, Colorado Rising Action, and I agree on this point. It can't come too soon. So, Michael, let's turn to that $30.5 billion Colorado budget that, according to Colorado Politics, Governor Jared Polis signed into effect on his 100th day in office.
Yeah, it's a big budget. It's getting bigger every year. So last year, it was $28.9 billion. So we went up $1.6 billion in just 1 year. And that's up from, in the last decade, we've been going up $1 billion plus every single year. But, we still can't find enough money to pay for transportation and some of these other, things that should be a priority. We did get $300 million for transportation, but it's a one-time expenditure. And so, looking at some of the projects that we have to do across the state, we need to take that money and make it consistent so we can do these bigger projects and actually, fix the road problem that we have in the state.
Oh, but the budget does include $175 million to offer free full-day kindergarten throughout the state. That's, of course, a top Polis priority. Let's talk a little bit about the wisdom, the veracity of that.
Well, it's interesting just because you had some pushback from Democrats originally on this, and obviously it went through and they gave it to him, but they said, you know what, it's going to be hard to pay for the transportation needs that we have by doing this. It's going to take a little bit more from our normal, K through 12 education fund. And so, this is something that we've locked in now. This is something that's going to be consistent throughout time, and we don't know what these policies are going to do to the economy, going to do to the state budget. And, if that budget dips, we still have to pay for kindergarten. And so I think early childhood education is really important. I think, if legislators want to prioritize it, that's one thing, but they have to have that discussion about why they're not going to fund other things that people want to.
I just wonder about the wisdom, and this is just me. It's kind of a left field question. The wisdom for a 5-year-old of full-day kindergarten.
Well, I think people should have, the decision, I guess. And right now, several districts decide to provide full-day kindergarten. My 5-year-old's in half-day kindergarten.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. But, I think you saw some bipartisan support on this. I think this is a direction that, Governor Polis definitely wanted to go in. He spent, almost half of his state of the state, which was his platform for what he wanted to do on this issue. And so it's just something that he's dug in on, and the legislature, which was reluctant originally, decided to go along with it. And we'll see if it has an impact. That's the thing is are our students learning more because they have, a longer, earlier start? That's going to be something that we find out.
Just wonder about the attention span of a 5-year-old. It's kind of like the attention span of a radio talk show host.
I'm sure it depends on the kid. My kid can be very, have a great attention span if it's something he wants to do. I don't know if full-day kindergarten would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Things,
all right. Okay. Before I let you go, just wanted to touch on a piece I had pulled out of the Greeley trip by Joe Moylan talking about the Colorado House Appropriations Committee approving 8-3 Tuesday a bill that would reduce the penalties for drug possession offenses to misdemeanors from felonies. Talk about the big picture on that.
Well, there's this movement, criminal justice reform movement, saying that, penalties are too high on certain drug-related offenses. In this specific bill, I guess I'm worried that the DAs didn't come out and support this, that they opposed it. They're basically saying that it doesn't provide flexibility for judges to say, what, you're not participating in, this drug program or whatever, you're going to go to jail. It caps the jail time. And so I think, one thing is understanding other states have done this, 5 other states. What is what happened? Give it a few years to see what happens in those states before doing anything. But the DA is opposing it. These are the experts. They know the budget constraints. They know, what happens to reoffending and how the process works really well. And so I think, while there's good intentions there, I think you need the DAs on board.
Before I let you go this morning, Michael, just to borrow a phrase from former President Barack Obama, elections have consequences, and I think we are learning that. Do you think this will be a long-term lesson learned by Colorado voters?
Well, I wrote a piece on Colorado and on Complete Colorado right now that just posted, and basically saying this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think what the policies that the liberals are enacting right now is going to have an impact on our economy. And I think voters are going to have a response. It might not be, this year, it might not be next year, but within the next, few cycles, I think voters do respond. And so I think it's a long-term battle, but policies do matter. And people want, our state to stay number one economy. They want to stay a high quality of life. So I have faith in our voters.
Well, that's good to hear. Michael Fields, Executive Director, Colorado Rising Action. Happy Good Friday. Happy Easter. Where can we learn more about your work?
ColoradoRisingAction.org. And then Facebook, Twitter, everything else. So it's good to be on with you, Gail.
Certainly do appreciate your time and insights. 8:29 now.